So I chose this topic today because I was inspired by something Baba had shared in one of the Abhyakt Murlis, that the basis of true happiness and power in Brahmin life is truth and honesty. And, as we come towards the end of the year, I think it's an opportunity to reflect on one's own chart and one's own progress, and where and how far have I come on this destination to completion. And I think that sometimes we can feel powerful but not happy. And sometimes we can be happy but not powerful. And I think today what I want to do is explore, my own kind of churnings, and also with all of you, just coming to a place inside myself where I can be happy and powerful. And this morning, especially in the Murli, Baba spoke about the fact that Brahma in the subtle region has no story. It's only the Brahma down here in the corporeal world, who is the father of humanity, that has a story. The complete Brahma is the Brahma that Shiv Baba uses to create the new world. And it takes the corporeal Brahma time to reconcile with that subtle Brahma. In the early days of the Yajna, Baba, when Gulzar Dadi started to see the complete form of Brahma in the subtle region, she would come down and tell Brahma Baba. And Baba would then, with Brajendra Dadi, devise questions to ask that complete Brahma. Who are you? What are you doing? And slowly, Baba started to gain awareness and a deep acceptance that he is that complete form. He is Narayan. It takes a lot to accept the greatness of your part in the cycle. But I feel that's where Baba started, from a very real place. And I suppose the question this morning that had arisen in morning class was, if you can't accept your own greatness, then what kind of relationship are you having with God? And for Brahma Baba, I think accepting his part, accepting that complete Brahma, was a very important part of the journey to becoming true and honest. And it's interesting that God would choose the complete form of Brahma because Brahma achieved completion in all aspects of his dharana and his efforts. And so that's the only complete blueprint of a deity, a full deity, 100% deity that God can use to create the blueprint of all the other mini deities in the world. And I feel that one of the most important conversations we do need to start in our Brahmin life, if we haven't already, is this conversation with my complete stage. Many years ago, when I was leaving Madhuban, I remember whilst departing from Madhuban, Daddy said to me, make your complete stage your best friend. And I really appreciated those words, because I feel that the journey to becoming powerful is accepting the originality of this truth, because the foundation of truth is divinity, you know, in its fullest form. And when you're making your complete stage your best friend, you're in effect accepting your divinity. And, you know, just for a moment, just feel that part of you that's so subtle, in the subtle region that's complete. The first time Baba's drishti fell on you, Baba saw that divinity. Baba saw that complete soul. And how did it make you feel? Very special. And wow, beautiful, you know? So I feel that that is very important in our Brahmin life. We can't put aside our complete self in order to make effort, get on with our lives, in order to, you know, just live Brahmin life, because otherwise Brahmin life becomes quite mundane. It becomes survival. Because inside us, the impulse of truth is informed by the relationship we have with this best friend. And, you know, I remember Avyak Bapdada speaking, and this sentence touched me very deeply, that complete truthfulness is based on purity. And this isn't about truthfulness in words or truthfulness like in doing. It's about being true in being and receiving the power of purity. And that happens when I deeply accept my originality. I am a soul. I am a child of the Supreme. I accept the cycle, and I accept my part in this cycle. That's true. And staying in that unlimited awareness of myself, Baba, the cycle, my part, it keeps my thoughts true. And when I say keeps my thoughts true, it means, you know, I don't allow my thoughts to go down different tracks of waste, because there's just no point in it. Maybe about what the world thinks of something, what social media thinks of something. There's a lot of simplicity in thinking that arises, and a natural acceptance of reality. There's no kind of rationalizing strategies, coping mechanism, and analysis paralysis going on. But that awareness of being the soul makes us true. You know, it infuses and creates true thoughts of reality. So what is reality? The reality is we are in the winter of humanity. And when you're in the winter of any season, you stay indoors and protect yourself, and you get creative inside. And so these are times for very, very deep experimentation. And I feel that when we don't stay true to ourselves, then our thinking gets caught up in so many external issues, reacting to external issues in the world. You know, one form of being true and powerful, and this is one of Baba's Shrima, is be quiet. Put a bead in your mouth if somebody's saying something to you that's not correct. I remember a conversation just now in Madhuban with Sister Nilu, and she was sharing how when she first came to Daddy, she would find that there were certain brothers, because Madhuban was run by brothers at that point, that would come in front of Daddy and would speak very rudely or perhaps get upset. And they wouldn't always pay attention to how they were speaking to Daddy. And Daddy would stay silent. Neelu would ask her, Daddy, why are you so quiet? They've said all this. And then Daddy would say to her and placate her by saying, well, maybe they're busy. They've got a lot of responsibility. So they just come to Daddy to offload, become light. And then after a while, when Neelu started to get to know everybody, she realized that these particular souls didn't have a lot of responsibility. And yet they'd still come to Daddy with a lot of their, issues and perhaps not be mindful about how they were speaking to Daddy. And Neelu asked Daddy again, what does she do when she stays quiet? When clearly what they're saying is not always true. And Daddy said to Neelu, Daddy stays quiet and remembers Baba and says, Baba, my karmic accounts are being settled. Please give this soul whatever they need. And that was quite revealing, because I understand that we've had 63 births of kind of getting up to no good and mischief. And there will be energy or frequencies of energy coming to us through a person, through an event, through a circumstance that, are not always respectful and loving and harmonious, and we have to tolerate. But accepting that if I'm being told off, or if I'm, being criticized, if I'm being insulted, a karmic account is being settled. And by staying quiet, you allow that thing to pass. And it was very interesting because we were sitting in the room with Sister Gayatri from New York. She just happened to come through Madhuban for a few days. And she shared a story where Daddy Gulzar had come to New York, and there was an event at the UN with her. Now, the UN is a union building, and a union building means, it's a team of constructors, architects. So whatever's fixed is fixed. You can't change anything, not even the room setup. But Sister Mihini had come into that particular room and didn't like the arrangement. So she said, she told Gayatri Ben, please change it. And Gayatri Ben, in her enthusiasm, started changing everything around. And then the director of the center came down and started, telling Gayatri Ben off. You can't do this. Don't you realize this is a union building? And, really telling her off. And Gayatri Ben said, out of the corner of her eye, she saw Daddy watching her. And then, Daddy wasn't doing anything. She was just silently watching her. So anyway, Gayatri Ben accepted, and, she tried to explain, but the lady was quite upset. So anyway, they left the room as it was and did the program. And then Sister Gayatri accompanied Daddy back in the car, back to the center after the program. And she said to Daddy, but Daddy, you saw what was happening. Why didn't you intervene? Mahini Ben had asked me to change the room. It wasn't my fault. And Daddy's reply to her was, yes, Daddy was watching how you were settling your karmic account. And then Gayatri Ben said, so Daddy, did I pass or did I fail? And Daddy said, you failed because you reacted. And so, as I walked away from that little interaction, I realized how much we keep our karmic accounts and our anxieties alive because we react in small, small ways and don't have the ability to remain in truth, the silence of our own being. And you know, it's something that I have really appreciated from the Avyakt signals lately. When Baba said, tolerance isn't about tolerating another person. It's about being obedient to Baba. And what would Baba do? Baba keeps the love. It's about honoring Baba's love in an interaction, not the intellect of what's right and what's wrong in that moment. Because if you prove what's right, but at the cost of destroying love in a relationship, then, you know, you've just broken something. And truth is constructive. You know, truth helps to integrate things. The trueness of your being brings people together and links everybody to Baba. So I felt that, you know, divinity is this deep recognition of who I am, who Baba is, and my part in the cycle. And that's the foundation. That awareness is the foundation of everything. Now, you know, here we are in our 83rd bodies. We've had an 84th birth. So in this 83rd body, you know, Gopi has a history, a story, sanskars, old sanskars and nature, karmic accounts. There's a lot of soup there. And then there's the elevated Brahmin, the child of Baba, the true form, the one that is becoming an angel and a deity. And the moment I'm reborn to Baba, Baba has given me a lot of Srimad, you know, a lot of directions how to live an elevated life, create an elevated culture, an elevated lifestyle. And sometimes that the vision that Baba has of us and how royally we can live in the reality of being elevated beings comes into conflict with our 83rd birth culture. Whatever that culture may be, Indian, Turkish, Greek, Dutch, French, whatever, Spanish. And, you know, culturally, our sanskars, especially of the 83rd body, they're mixed. And I guess in each moment, if I stay in the awareness of who I am, I can choose an elevated response to something. Because I think that being honest and tapasya, real tapasya on the ground, is really experimenting with being honest and experimenting with Baba's Srimad in each action. One of the reasons why I really appreciate Baba's Srimad, because I remember many years ago asking Daddy, if you leave, and if all the daddies leave, then who's going to look after the yajna? How will the yajna run? And Daddy said, the yajna doesn't run on personalities. The yajna runs on the basis of Srimad. And spiritual endeavor means, and honesty in my spiritual endeavor means that I at least experiment with being honest with Baba's Srimad in each action. And that means, you know, it's sorting out this conflict that happens between these two cultures. The culture down here of the 83rd birth, and how I prefer to eat, how I prefer to sleep, how I prefer to engage, and then the expectation that we've bought into down here of how we have to be to live. And then the 84th birth, the Brahmin, so angel, so deity birth. And honesty means experimenting with Srimad so that I can reconcile that conflict and rise above it to be myself. And when I do that, I really feel happy. So I'll give you an example. One of the aspects of Srimad that I've often experimented with and has been less expenditure, greater glorification, right? Greater success through less expenditure. It's always been something at the back of my mind. And that's always a benchmark, Srimad or principle that guides. And I remember on the ground traveling to a country one time, and this country didn't have a lot of things. And you know, I had 2 suitcase allowance, and everything I had came to 3 suitcases. And when I looked up and I saw, well, it cost about £80 to pay for a 3rd suitcase, I thought, well, the contents of what I'm taking is not £80. So, you know, what do I do? But then they needed this stuff. So I was in a quandary. I thought, should I just pay the £80 and take it? But again, I said, why should I pay the £80? This is for Baba's work, Baba's service. And then I thought, okay, Gopi, there's no point creating stress in your mind. Just make a decision. And I decided, okay, this is my principle. This is the Srimad I want to honor. And I also want this because this is not mine. It has to bring benefit to Baba's home. So I'm going to pack the 3rd bag and take it to the airport and see what happens. So I did. And when I got to the airport, the amazing thing was that because I have an elite membership, I can check in at business class, even though I'm traveling economy. So that day, none of the baggage belts were working. So they took me into business class check-in, and the guy at the counter was getting so stressed because he had so many bags and the luggage belts weren't working. And he saw my gold card. He said, okay, how many bags have you got? And I said 3. He said, okay, please, here, take this and I'll check them all in and through. He didn't ask any questions and he took all 3 bags in. And I thought, well, drama, right? I wasn't dishonest. I said I had 3 bags. He didn't question it, didn't ask me for any payment, and they went through. And so, you know, the experimentation, and that's what I'm saying, is it's not about being perfect. It's about honoring a Srimad and a principle that is true, you know, because it's something that has made you complete and has, you know, kept your divinity alive. And I was so happy. I remember sitting in the room when I was packing the suitcases, when I'd made the decision, I'm just going to pack the 3rd bag. I was so happy inside because I had honored my principle. It didn't matter what the outcome was. The decision I'd made had honored my principle. And I think sometimes in Brahmin life, because we get so used to being of our 83rd birth culture, you know, being Indian or being Gujarati or being Punjabi, that that's our default thinking pattern. We don't stop to actually go into silence, be with Baba, emerge that feeling. And then, you know, what's the Srimad here? And so for me, this experiment with Srimad in every action is what honesty is. at its core. And it's a wonderful experiment because it yields magical results beyond your expectation, you know? And I feel like sometimes in our Brahmin lives, you know, we move fast because we know the Srimad and we are aligned with it in our life. We've made it a life principle that I'm going to experiment with my actions on the basis of this Srimad. But in other areas where perhaps you don't know, you start to think, well, is it right? Is it wrong? Or there's confusion. It's because the soul hasn't churned the principle of Srimad enough in that area. And that's where it's important to ask for advice and help from the seniors to understand what is the Srimad here. And then to experiment with that in my own context. And everyone's context is different. So it's no two sizes for the same person. But if I hold true to a principle and I act on that without any expectation of an outcome, then what is beneficial will happen for everyone. That's been my experience. And especially, you know, this affects the way we think, our speed in Brahmin life. We go fast because Srimad's very clear for us. It's automatic. We make decisions on the basis of our principles. But that speed slows down and becomes mediocre, or we get disheartened because we start mixing the dictates of this 83rd birth life with the Srimad of our 84th birth life. And so then our whole car slows down. We start to get tired, disheartened, things are not working out, and we don't know why. And there's some mixture there. And that's when what could have been a clear path becomes crooked. And you kind of feel like, you know, sometimes, especially when we're having to deal with our karmic accounts, we're facing our karmic accounts of the 83rd birth, but we can get lost in them. And that's what I see at this point in time, because as we come towards the finale, the karmic machinery is speeding up. And so drama is going to use any opportunity to help you settle your karmic accounts. So either it happens through your own self-realization, where you sit in yoga, become bodiless, you know, enjoy the happiness of being the soul in the lap of the Supreme, and allow the fire of that happy yoga and joyful yoga to burn your sins. Or if you don't do that, then you have to face the music. And this is where what I'm seeing at this point in time, people getting lost in their karmic accounts. And almost like, it's like you chain yourself to a karmic bondage and feel, well, I have to go through this. I have to go through this. You might not have to, but maybe you can face it differently. And that requires the soul to understand the Srimad it has to uphold in that situation. That's very important. Otherwise, you will get lost in trying to please people, trying to make someone happy, or you will get lost in the suffering of people around you, especially those that are close to you. It's very interesting. My father passed away 2 months ago. And about 2 weeks ago, my mother, she's been with him for like 55 odd years. So, you know, it's lifetime, half a lifetime together. But she had a fall. She fractured 5 ribs. She fractured her shoulder, dislocated it, and broke her nose. Now, it was already hard enough for her, you know, to kind of lose her partner and her best friend. And then on top of that, there's this. So she spent 2 weeks in hospital, and I was in India, and I just came back last week. And I went home for Diwali and New Year, and we had a beautiful celebration. And of course, I have siblings that are taking care of her, but they're compromised with their health and they're tired. And I came back home to help out a bit. And I've been, cooking her favorite dishes because I kind of know this is what she likes. But at some point, I could watch my thinking that I was starting to think, oh, well, how is she going to cope? And do I have to come in? And can I come in and can I help my other siblings so that they don't have to make that much effort? And can I do? And I had to stop myself. And I really had to go to Baba, because I remember one incident where I was cooking and one of my siblings got quite angry at me and said, oh, do you have to cook at this time? Do you have to do it this time? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm helping you and you're reacting. And that evening when I sat in front of Baba and I just went very, very quiet and I put that karmic account in front of Baba, I had this feeling that was like, this is their karmic account. Help, but don't interfere. And I realized that Baba wanted to give something to this soul. And so I wasn't cooking for my mother, but as I was cooking in Baba's remembrance, Baba was giving a return to this soul who had just lost her best friend. And Baba was stepping in to look after her. And when I realized that Baba's giving a return to this soul, then I was free to be in this karmic account without any strings attached. No obligation. I wasn't in this karmic account because I was her daughter or I was someone's sister, but I am Baba's instrument. And whatever Baba, Karan Karavan Har Baba, wants to give this soul or these souls, then let me be present for that and not get caught up in mixing my own dictates with it. So you kind of think how here's the elevated Brahmin, and then you've got karmic accounts here, and you come down as Baba's instrument, help, support, and then you can become detached again as Baba's instrument. Come down, help, support, then become detached as Baba's instrument. And that way you remain much more unlimited in your being and in your ability to serve humanity, because that's what makes us angels. Angels are unlimited. You're not tied down to one or two people. You belong to the world, and the world is calling for you. And so the joy and the happiness of serving in the unlimited way. So, the reconciliation with our perfection, I would say perfection, but our complete stage, that part of us that's so divine and sweet and very, very pure-hearted and beautiful. And then tuning into that energy and experimenting in every action. Being honest with Baba's Srimad in every action. And there are times in our Brahmin life when we resist growth. Often I've noticed when I experience resistance, it means I have a lot. There's going to be a huge lesson for me. I have to grow. So I know this sounds, well, instinctively it feels paradoxical to not do anything you resist, but actually that's the very thing you need to do to be able to grow. So, for me at this point in time, yes, it's getting late. you know, maybe we shouldn't be talking about experimenting at this point in time. We should be talking about full serving. We need to be, the curtains opening, and we just need to be ready to shine. But there is a little, tiny little margin left still, I feel. And that if we can maximize this time period and not waste, time, because I feel that's it's honesty not to waste time. An honest soul doesn't waste time. And, one of the other complaints that gets finished is that nobody trusts me. When there is honesty, Baba, seniors, people will trust you. There will be a feeling of trustworthiness there for you. So it's not a question about sitting there and saying, well, nobody trusts me, nobody gives me something, but it's almost about making yourself worthy of trust by experimenting with being honest. And, when we come to Baba and we've taken a new birth, then Baba says everything of ours, the mind, the body, the wealth, everything is surrendered. So everything we use from that point down as a trustee. So it's important to take advice, because as we take advice, we ensure that we're on the right track for ourselves and in our relationship with Baba, that our activity isn't taking us further away from Baba, but it is keeping us honest. It is keeping us close to Baba. And that's really important at this time, to stay close to Baba. Because, it's Baba. When you say the word Baba, what do you feel in your mind and your heart? And is it instant, or does it take time to feel something? So, happiness and power, both are needed. Because if one isn't there, you can't stay in balance. And I think each one of us then has to really take a reality check of our lives now. If I'm not feeling happy, or I'm not feeling powerful, I might be feeling helpless, unhappy and helpless, then it means there's a mixture of my own dictates with truth. And I've got to find out where I'm mixing things. And, that's going to require a lot of humility and to take help, because sometimes the mixture is so much that you've lost yourself in it. You can't even see it. Maybe somebody else can, but you can't. And that's when you have to find a good friend that can just say it as it is and not indulge your mixtures, but can help you to see what the reality is and what your own dictates are. And this is where I really appreciated Daddy's support in my life, because many times, on the field of service, there would be situations, there would be things, and we would go to her and she would listen to the way we speak about things. And then she'd say, don't think like that. Or don't think like that. And I started to realize through that process that there were certain thought processes that were natural to me, but they weren't pure. They weren't compassionate. They were Rajopradhan thought processes. And Daddy would very gently guide our thinking to seeing something from a different perspective, because thoughts have such an effect on the outcome of something. I remember a brother who had arranged a public program for Daddy many years ago in Oxford. And he had told Daddy not to speak about God in the program. Now, Daddy Janki was the right hand of God. So, 10 minutes into the program, and she starts talking about Baba, 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 and this brother gets very upset. He's interviewing her. And, the program went very well. The audience, seemed to start to accept what Daddy was saying. We could feel that she was carrying them to a different level. There was like a transfer of faith happening in the room. Her faith in Baba was opening the minds and hearts of others to having faith in Baba. And at the end of the program, that brother came to Daddy and said, "But Daddy, I felt the program was a failure and this and that." And Daddy said, "Don't think like that. You were an instrument for that program. You saw how many people took benefit from the program. They came to take Toli and blessings from Daddy afterwards. They were so happy. So they're all leaving with that happiness. But you as an instrument for that program, if you think in this way, then how will they be able to sustain the benefit they've received from the program?" So what does it mean to be true? It means to renounce those thoughts and thought processes that are self-indulgent. I didn't like it. Preferential, dislikes, likes. And to know that if I'm going down that road of self-indulgence, it's hurting someone else behind me. Each one of us are ancestor souls. And there's a lineage of souls behind us. And one of the things I really admire about certain friends I have is the truthfulness in their silence. And that they will hold back on certain reactive thoughts, self-indulgent thoughts, and suspend that to be true in the relationship in this moment now. And that sustains a frequency of truth that ensures the happiness of everyone you're connected with. And this is when Baba's love can flow through, forgiveness happens easily, compassion stays, Baba's mercy reaches souls, and souls can be uplifted. So, it's 5:15. And I think this is an hour long, so I want to stop there. And you've been hearing me ramble. So anybody would like to share anything or ask any questions?
Gopi, we don't have any questions because we were very clear. And I think every one of us has to look inside and just think about the 84th birth and how much we follow Srimad and all these things. And really, I appreciate whatever you shared. You shared from the heart, and whatever you shared with your experiences in life, in Brahmin life, were very helpful and beneficial for all of us. And we need to go deep and check ourselves to see where we are. And of course, you had very good friends in your Brahmin life. And I wish we had also so good friends as you. We have good friends, but you had the best friends.
Well, one of our bestest friends is, I always say it starts with the friendship you create with Baba and the friendship you create with your complete stage. If you can really stay honest with these two, you will always find friends to help you move forward. Beautiful friends. You will attract beautiful friends to you, and that's the resonance, that friendship with Baba, the honesty with Baba. I was in China recently. I was on an Iraqi tour, and I was in China and Indonesia and Thailand. And it's very interesting that in China, they haven't been able to register because it's a communist country. You have to stay incognito. Religion is not allowed, there. And it's amazing how Baba's children, and there must be a family of over 85 there, definitely. 65 were on a retreat with me, which is a miracle, because you can't have such big gatherings. But Sister Chen has just, done some amazing work up there. And there was one particular sister who had to take her daughter to Canada and, get her put into education there. And, she's one of the main translators for Chinese Murlis. So she's always soaked in the Murlis. And she said, okay, I don't have a daddy with me now, but I've got Baba. So what she started doing every night was she started writing to Baba every night. And about 4 years ago, because her husband's not in Guyana, and of course there was the issue of celibacy that came up. So she wrote to Baba one evening, and she's writing from her heart. She's saying, Baba, I want to follow the Srimad of purity in this physical relationship. And she was just openly, really from her heart, sharing with Baba everything. And she made she has a practice that every evening before she goes to bed, she follows Baba's Srimad of spending half an hour with Baba in remembrance, writing to Baba, checking her chart and going to bed. So she did all of that. And the next morning, what happened? At the breakfast table, her husband just comes up to her and says, are you celibate? And she says, yes. And he says, okay. And that was it. That was it. And that incident, she said, it gave her so much faith in what she was doing with Baba that now, whatever happens, anything that happens, she doesn't stay in her head too much with it. She just writes to Baba every night. And now she's finding, as she's doing that, the answers are coming quicker, things are being resolved. They recently moved to a new place in Beijing because they have to, for reasons to stay incognito. And at this new place, there was a accommodation issue with some sisters. And, one of the sisters was complaining to her about not having sufficient furniture. And so that night, she's writing to Baba about this. And she's saying, Baba, this and this and this and this. And the next morning, Chen, who was not even aware of this, phoned that sister and said, well, do you want this and this and this furniture? We're going furniture shopping. We're getting a good rate. Would you like it? And it was like a solution that just emerged. And so there's this thing of resonance that's important right now. That when you keep your mind open and honest and resonant with Baba, Manmana Bhav, then that resonance, it touches everything that's connected with God. So you will get what you need. You might not get what you want, but you will get what you need. Ravan will give you what you want. So be very careful what you want, but you will get what you need.
Wow, wonderful story. Yes, indeed. Yes, you're very right, and we should have this faith in Baba and be with Baba all the time. And I think we have some problems recently, and then now I think that we should write a letter to Baba. A whole group of us can write. This would have more power, I think, if we are more writing to Baba for changes to happen. And of course, we don't want Ravan in between us. So there is one question here. How do you interact with your perfect stage?
I think, I'm not sure if it's about interacting with my perfect stage. I think at the first step, it's just feeling it. And, I observe inside when I'm, in whatever situation, what am I being inspired by? That's an important question for me. Because inspiration is giving you a clue to the feeling of your complete stage. When you're being impressed in someone, you're being trapped in their thing. But when you're being inspired by someone, that quality in them is triggering the quality of your complete stage. So diving deep into inspiration is very important. And then acting on that inspiration is very important. So if you call all of that process an interaction, maybe that's what it is. But it starts from a feeling, and then the attention to put that into practice is what then begins the process of integrity. Really honoring that part of you that is complete, because it's an inspired space. And now the obstacles come. I mean, truly, there's a time and a moment for everything. It's not that just because you feel inspired and you want to act on it, it's going to happen now. It doesn't work like that. Drama has the moment for it. And sometimes we need patience and tolerance, and we need to communicate, and we need to bring everybody on board. But we need to follow through with that inspiration. Because if we don't follow through with that inspiration, we don't bring something to completion inside us. And then you're left with all your wonderful ideas and, kind of, okay, well, we're just existing and moving in Brahmin life because that's the way it is. It's too difficult to execute it. So it's better to think less from a place of inspiration and see it through than to have too many thoughts of service and do very little. So I feel like this relationship with the complete stage can slow things down and help the soul to become accurate in playing its part. Because I can only play my part. I cannot play someone else's part. And I think that the trap at this point in time that we have to be careful of is trying to rescue someone from their own karmic accounts. Yeah, especially when we come from very close-knit families, or maybe if we're a teacher and we have lots of a big center, students, it's a big trap. I can only play my part, and I can only genuinely search for inspiration and act on inspiration. And that's honest, because then I'll learn something. So when we look for inspiration, that means in the situation I'm in, I've got to start looking for inspiration. So, what is the goodness here? Because you're only ever inspired by goodness when you make the effort to see goodness. I mean, in Ravan's kingdom, there will always be a reason to complain about something. Always. It's always, it's like, it's chaotic. Nothing is a straight line in Ravan's kingdom. But, what am I choosing to focus on? What am I choosing? Either I see what is not working and suppress myself, or I choose to see the diamond. And I let myself be inspired by the effort that someone is making. And that will then prompt a more proactive, like a benevolence, a giving, a generosity in our efforts. Is that okay?
Wow, thank you. yes, the same sister said, Nessa actually asked a question that you answered. How do you interact with your, that's very interesting. Then how is the friendship, with it? Can you elaborate?
You know, my observation is that when you have a best friend, well, it's a very lovely relationship, first of all, when you're in a good space. But when I've indulged thought processes that are not in alignment with it, then it just becomes a detached observer. I don't feel inspired anymore. And that's telling me that my mind is going down a track that's not real. It might be influenced by something from the outside. It might be this. So, you know, you can start to feel, you can live in that state for a long time. You can live and be influenced by something from outside for a long time. And inside you can feel emptier and emptier, drier and drier. And it's really important not to make that a sanskara in Brahmin life. So for me, the complete stage becomes an observer. Well, you know, just kind of watches me as I kind of take a crooked path, when actually the path's quite simple. And then the times when I enjoy it the most is when I'm being quiet, because it has so many beautiful thoughts and such a beautiful perspective on things that in silence and quietness, that beauty reveals itself. And I feel, you know, I need to give this friend more airtime, more time to speak to me. And that happens in silence. And so, you know, if some of you feel, okay, well, I've never really talked to my complete stage before, where do I start? Well, I would just start with, you know, some quiet time. Take a day off. Take a day in silence. Do what you have to do to fulfill your responsibilities, but just relax inside and spend some time dialoguing with this part of you, with this, what am I being inspired by? And then pick a picture, draw the picture of what you're being inspired by, and you'll start to get a sense of this complete form. Then go and sit in front of Baba and take drishti from Baba. Because in Baba's drishti is the blueprint of your complete stage. And when you feel, Baba's drishti can unlock it. In fact, Baba's drishti does unlock it, because that's the way we're born. You know, we take love. He loves us because he sees that. And there is something so beautiful inside each and every Brahmin that God has been attracted to. Forget about the people of the world. The people of the world won't even see it. It's so subtle that God has been attracted to. And if I can just catch that, catch what he sees, wow, it's like recognizing the diamond. And that has a big impact on your self-respect.